Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, this time featuring Ninjas, possibly Yu-Gi-Oh's only tempo deck. Ninjas has a bit of a funny history in Genesis, with the first list pointing the deck quite heavily for no apparent reason. Pretty quickly they made it clear that a playtester was just cooking them alive with the deck and testing, and dropped the points all the way to 0, so now we have all 100 points to spend on delicious non-engine. The story makes sense to me, since this is a deck that very much rewards you for playing out of your mind and punishes you heavily for playing even mediocrely. So if you want a challenge, and a very different playstyle from normal, then let's get started. Starting with Hanzo, who on normal summon can add a ninjutsu art card from your deck to your hand, which is any of our spell traps. It's one of those dual archetype things, but it doesn't mess with us too much in this deck. Then on flip or special summon, you can add a ninja monster instead. There's not a once per turn in sight here, but just by the nature of the deck, it's really hard to abuse that fact and put multiple Hanzos on board each turn. Note that he has an effect when flip summoned, but isn't a flip monster. Most of the ninjas are kind of that way. This is the only one where you have to flip summon to get his effect. All of the rest of them, it's just when they're flipped face up. But they're not flip monsters technically, so you can't use Mimighoul Maker with them, but they are flip monsters for all intents and purposes. It's weird. Ninjas is weird. Next up, we have 3 Mitsus, who can special summon from hand if you control a ninja card or a face-down defense position monster, and then when the opponent activates a monster effect, you can target a face-down defense position monster you control, flip it up, flip the Mitsu down, and then if you flipped up a ninja, negate the effect that you are responding to. So this is a convoluted negate that also lets you trigger flip effects as part of it, which is very, very good, as well as just being just one of a number of ways we have to put extra bodies on field. We are not a deck that swarms the field with bodies by any means, but we want 2 if we can get there on our first turn so that we can contact fuse into our big boss monster. Even if we see 0, it works, though. Again, it's a weird deck. You'll see what I mean as we go. Next up, we have 3 Tobaris, who can discard from hand to special summon a different ninja from your hand, so that's another way we can put an extra body on field. And then, the turn that this was special summoned or flip face up, it cannot be destroyed by card effects or battle, so it can just help stall, which is great, because this is a slow, grindy control deck that is really, really, really good in a simplified board state, so being able to stall is kind of our entire thing. And then lastly, it can also quick fuse during the opponent's main or battle phase, and again, this is technically a fusion deck. We do a lot of contact fusing, but being able to actually fuse kind of matters too sometimes. Here's where I'll explain the term tempo if you are unfamiliar with that. It's mostly a term used in Magic the Gathering to denote a deck whose goal is not necessarily to full-on control what the opponent's doing and stop them completely, nor is it full-on aggro just trying to kill the opponent as fast as possible. It is a deck where you are trying to stall long enough to kill the opponent by some means that is non-traditional. Here, I'll tell you right now, we'll get to it when we get to the extra deck, but we attack directly. So all we need to do is not die long enough to kill the opponent with direct attacks, which takes a couple of turns because we don't swarm with bodies, but that's the whole game plan here. So because Tobari can fade battle for an entire turn and can't be destroyed by card effects that same turn, that's just one of the ways we are stalling while attacking directly to just kill the opponent over time. That's why it's a tempo deck. Then we have 2 Kageros, who on normal special summon or being flipped face up can special summon a ninja from your hand or graveyard in face down defense, so that lets us access more resources. And then when the opponent activates a card or effect that would target a ninja or a face down defense position monster you control, you can summon her from grave face down in defense position, then bounce the targeted card, which gets you follow up. It lets you dodge targeted removal or negation, things like that. Just a very, very good card. That is, again, one of the ways that we can put 2 bodies on the field turn 1 to make our big guy. Then we are playing 2 Bakus. Baku is a Poplar. When added to hand except by drawing it, you can special summon it out. And then on special summon or flip summon, or being flipped face up, not flipped summon for this one, you can target a ninja or a ninjutsu art in your grave, or face up spell and trap zone and add it back to the hand. We've got one Noble Knight Shield Bearer in here. The only thing that matters here is it can banish from hand to add Baku, and then Baku poplars out and recovers a thing. Notably, you can play multiple Shield Bearers, but this is where I'll say I went to locals with this deck this week, and I actually went 4-0. But one of the issues I was running into over the course of the tournament was drawing way too many monsters and not enough back row. This is primarily a back row deck, and we need to see multiple to win. So while I managed to make it work, I took out a couple of shield bearers for the build I'm giving you, because I think we just need fewer names, and the rest of these are more or less non-negotiable. The only other one you could take out is Green Ninja. We'll get to that. Next up is 2 copies of Geo. This is our big disruption. This is the payoff for playing ninjas as an engine, because on normal special summon or being flipped face up, he can target 2 face up monsters on the field and book them. And then any opponent's monsters you booked can never change their battle position again. They are down for the count. So if you can resolve multiple Geos targeting 2 opponents' monsters each time, you can very quickly just turn off access to their monster zones. That is devastating to Link decks, that is devastating to Xyz decks, and that is devastating to Synchro decks. It is less so against Fusion, but it is still a big disruption that they have to play around even in Fusion decks. So just like, Joe them repeatedly, forever. Helps you stall. And then lastly, if a monster is flipped face up while he is already face up on the field, you can also just destroy a card on the field, which is less relevant, but still 3 disruptions on a body is crazy, and we can just summon them out multiple times from various means. Then we've got 1 Green Ninja. This is the most take it or leave it of the ninjas. If a monster is special summoned to your field face up, you can target it, book it, summon this guy instead, and then if this guy is sent from hand or field to the graveyard, you can book a card. It is technically extension. It's another name that we have access to. It's kind of almost a disruption. It's not a bad one of that you can search and use. It's just not the greatest. Then the spell and traps are the meat of the deck, starting with the best card in the entire deck, Ninjutsu Art Notebook of Mystery. This is a quick play that your opponent has to control a card to activate. That can be just a normal spell or anything, just any card on field. You can set a ninja and a ninjutsu art from deck or grave, but one has to come from each. So for example, if you pitch Tobari to summon something earlier, like on your turn 1, then you can activate Notebook of Mystery, set the Tobari, then set a different ninjutsu art from your deck. So this card is recurable, and it's a +1. So this is like the grind game. We use this to just go +1 over and over and over and over again, off of recurring it for like Baku or searching more off of the Hanzo, things like that. Just a phenomenal card. And then if it is set and then sent to grave, you can book a card. Doesn't come up that often, but if someone MSTs this and for some reason you don't activate it, then you get a book instead, which is cool. The rest of our spells are one-ofs. We've got Ninjutsu Art Notebook, which I'm not entirely sold on, but once per turn you can send a ninja monster from your hand to the graveyard to set a different ninjutsu art. This helps you churn through a hand where you have kind of flooded on monsters that you can't use a whole ton of in one turn. You can just like pitch them to swap them out for the ninjutsu arts, which are more important, I would say, over the course of a couple of turns. It's fine. It's a fine card to search. Then much better in general is Iron Digger. This is one of those weird cards where you're not going to really understand it until you've played with it for a bit, but I'll do my best to explain it. This is an equip card that turns the equipped monster into a ninja, gives it 500 attack. Cool, we can put that on one of our guys, give him 500 attack. But once it is equipped, you can banish a ninja monster from your graveyard, target a card on the field, and destroy it. So that's removal. It helps us going second. That's pretty cool. But possibly even most importantly, if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can summon a banished ninja face down or add it to your hand. So the play pattern is you can either just equip this for bonus damage, again, we're attacking directly, the 500 adds up. You can use this as removal, just to pop one of an opponent's cards, but the best use case scenario for Iron Digger is to activate it on an opponent's monster that you want to get rid of. Then banish a monster from your grave to pop the card you equipped, which then triggers the Iron Digger to summon what you just banished. So in theory, if they can't interrupt that line, you are getting back whatever card in your grave is the best at any moment, while simultaneously dealing with one of the opponent's threats. It's an incredible card, and because it's an equip, if you set it off Notebook of Mystery, you can activate it same turn, which you can't do with any of the traps. So just keep that in mind. This is a going second card that's very, very good. And then we've got one Tenchi Kaime. This is our field spell. It's always treated as a ninjutsu art, otherwise it wouldn't be searchable. That would suck. And when a ninja deals battle damage to an opponent, in damage step, you can target a card to destroy it. That means that most things can't be used in response to you targeting to destroy. So this really, really screws over back row decks, because you can just, like, that's not once per turn. You can just clear out the entire back row by swinging with a bunch of ninjas. Even if you're just swinging with Mitsu for 200, you still destroy a bunch of stuff. And then if this face-up card leaves the field zone because of an opponent's card and is in grave or banishment, you can summon all of your ninjas from the grave, as many as you can. So it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. If they deal with this, you get a bunch of bodies. If they don't deal with this, then you're going to punch them and destroy their entire board. Very, very good card. Obviously, it's not part of a combo or anything, so we're just playing the one to search because we have a lot of ways to search it, like the Notebook of Mystery and Hanzo. Then our traps are kind of the meat of the deck, starting with the best one. Dancing Leaves is a continuous trap that you activate by targeting a ninja or a face-down defense position monster on the field, then tribute it for effect, and if you do, summon a ninja from your deck. Basically, that just sets off a whole chain of events. This is the biggest, easiest way to get Joe on the field on your opponent's turn, and as a bonus effect, you just tribute one of their cards if you've managed to book it before you activate this. So that can be 3 disruptions on its own, which is crazy. And that's not even it, because this can also target a ninjutsu art in your spell trap zone to bounce it back to the hand. Unfortunately, it's one effect or the other per turn, so what you're normally going to do is you set this, use it on the opponent's turn to summon out Joe or whatever else you need to get, then on your turn bounce it to hand so you can set it and use it again on the opponent's turn. So you can just use this as a recurable resource every turn. Just be aware that when it leaves the field, whatever you summoned off of it gets sent to the grave. But if you, say, summon the Geo, and then you can book your own Geo, which we have plenty of ways to do, then it forgets it was summoned off Dancing Leaves and will not go to grave when Dancing Leaves bounces itself. So there's ways around sending stuff to grave. Again, it's a complicated deck you have to kind of practice at. Then lastly, for Engine, we've got 2 Ninjutsu Art of Duplication, kind of similar to the Dancing Leaves. You have to tribute a ninja as cost to special summon a number of ninjas from your deck with levels equal to the level of what you tributed. So if you tribute Hanzo, he's a level 4. That means you can get, for example, 2 Mitsu, or a Mitsu and 2 Tobaris. That could be your summons off that. Or you could tribute a Gyo and get like Kagero, Green Ninja, and a Mitsu. Like, it just has to add up, but this allows you to turn any body into basically a full significant board alone, which is really tight. Then, like I mentioned earlier, we've got 100 points for non-engine. 3 droplets are really good. They let you dodge things and send off already used Arts of Duplication, because this one can't bounce itself, so you have to have Dancing Leaves 2 to bounce it. So, like, you can send that off, you can send off anything that's good in the graveyard, you can quick play use Notebook of Mystery, then send it off. Just like a very, very good card that not a lot of people are playing in Genesys because it costs 10 points. We can afford that and then some. Speaking of and then some, we're playing Pot of Extravagance. We don't use the extra deck a whole ton, so we can afford to banish a bunch of it just to draw a bunch of cards because the deck does have some consistency issue and this helps a lot. Just be aware this is one of those decks where we have an extra deck monster that is so important. It is a 3 of, but if you banish all 3, you've lost the game and you might as well concede. So if you hit all 3 Mazens, the game's over. That doesn't happen very often, it's only ever happened to me once. Then you've got 2 super polymerizations. I'd fit the 3rd. We don't quite have the points, and I don't think it's as important as these guys. But Super Poly's really, really good because, again, we don't use a ton of the extra deck, so we can just fit Garura, Mudragon, and Sea Monster in here, take care of their stuff. Theoretically, we can fuse our own monster on the opponent's turn using this. We don't really want to do that. We want to get rid of their board. Just really good. Again, something people aren't expecting because it costs so many points, but we can afford it. One Book of Moon is really, really good in this deck because you can either book your own stuff to dodge stuff and set up their flip effects, or you can book the opponent's cards and then tribute them off for Dancing Leaves. Just like very good, very versatile spell that I want to mention. A lot of people will play Book of Eclipse in Ninjas. I think that is objectively incorrect because the deck is slow enough that, one, the opponent's always going to get a bunch of draws off of Book of Eclipse, and two, Book of Eclipse flips up the stuff that you had flipped down by Joe. It undoes all of the work we have done to clog the opponent's zones and draws them cards. So I don't think Book of Eclipse is very good in this deck. I tried it out. It's kind of garbage. Then we've got 3 Daruma Karma Cannons, which is a staple in Ninjas because it books the entire board without the drawbacks of Book of Eclipse. It's just a little bit slower. You can't quick play it. But still, booking our entire board and the opponent's entire board helps you stall. It helps you set up for follow-up. It is just killer. For the sideboard, this is roughly the sideboard I was using at the tournament this week. 3 Lord of the Heavenly Prisons is basically non-negotiable because if you're going up against something that, like MST, can pop a bunch of back row, or if you think the opponent might be running Heavy Storms because they should be because it's cheap and worth it, then you need to have Lord of the Heavenly Prison for when you are going first so that you can protect your back row. Quaking Mirror Force is really funny and pretty good in the deck because no one ever expects Quaking Mirror Force, and it's just Joe again. So if the opponent declares an attack, you can book all of their attack position monsters permanently. This helps you clog the board and might just win you the game on the spot. I always run a few kaijus just in case I run into like Lunalight or Pearly or something, and importantly, in this deck in particular, Gamma Seal's really, really good because you can equip it with Iron Digger and then it is a Ninja Turtle, and that's very important. And then 3 Dark Holes because we have the points for it. These maybe, you could make an argument that these should be Illusion Gate, but because the games go so long in Ninjas and like intentionally we are trying to play a drawn out game, you don't want to be drawing a card that is once per duel because it's dead. And then we have 3 Hey Trunades because this allows you to bounce the opponent's back row so that you can set up your own to contest an established board going second. This card is very, very useful in this deck going second. It's not in every deck. I don't think Hey Trunade's amazing in a lot of decks, but this is one where I think it is very good because if we get set up and get our resource loop going, then we are very much favored. Then real quick in the extra deck, we don't actually touch the extra deck a whole ton, but we have 2 contact fusions that are very important for the deck. Especially Mazen. He is by far the most important thing in here. And that's because you can contact fuse this or our other fusion with 2 ninjas of different types, which is a little bit annoying because it means you can't use like Kagero plus Hanzo, but everybody else is a different type. These 2 are warriors. We got a beast with Baku. We've got a rock with Geo. We've got Mitsu's an insect. Tobari's a winged beast. The green ninja, just one more point for why it's kind of is it's another warrior. But in general, it's not too hard to get 2 different types. Which is great, because this guy allows you to attack directly with all of your ninjas. Just full cloth, all of them. So that means that Mazen himself represents 2,500 direct damage every turn, but as soon as you add like a Hanzo, they're on a 2-turn clock. So that is the game plan, is stall the opponent out, book their stuff repeatedly, fuse their stuff away, long enough not to completely stop them, not to run them out of resources, but to use Mazen to swing in like 2 to 3 times and just kill them. And that's not everything, because the opponent's monsters can't attack Mazen as long as you have a face-down defense position monster. So say you have Tobari, they have to attack the Tobari first, and it can't be destroyed by battle because it'll be flipped up when they do that. So like just, it has a little bit of protection for itself. And then also when the opponent activates a card or effect while you have Mazen on field, you can just detally out a ninja. So this is another way that you can put Geo on the field on the opponent's turn to book their entire board. Or just get follow-up, you can summon out. Notably, you can't summon Hanzo off of this and get its effect because Hanzo can miss timing frustratingly. It has to be Chainlink 1, and Mazen is always going to be a Chainlink 2 effect because it has to be responding to an opponent's card or effect. So if you summon Hanzo, you don't get to search off Hanzo. A little bit less importantly, but still very good, is Yaguramaru. Yaguramaru, same summoning condition. You have to use 2 monsters with different types. You can contact fuse into it, or you can use Tubari. And then on special summon or being flipped face up, you can banish a ninja or ninjutsu art from your hand, grave, or face up field to banish an opponent's card. This helps a lot against like decks that have one very important piece they have to protect, because normally those decks have destruction protection, not normally banishment protection. And you can recur this guy. We have one ultimate grade insect, which is a little bit of a meme, but you can summon this by tributing an insect with 2,000 or more defense that is equipped with an equip card. That is always Mitsu. She has 2,100 defense, and you can equip her with Iron Digger. And then for the trouble, you get a monster that can't be destroyed, and during the battle phase, you can wipe the opponent's board as long as there's a field spell on the field. So we have Tenchi Kaime, that turns on the field spell. We can summon out Ultimate Great Insect, go to battle, wipe all the opponent's monsters. It doesn't come up often, but it is possible to do, it is good, and it is funny. Then we've got Garura, Mudragon, and Sea Monster of Theseus for Super Poly. Sea Monster of Theseus is a relatively new addition, just because Killer Tune is the best deck in Advanced, and one of the best decks still in Genesis. Thankfully, it is much worse in Genesis, but being able to just super poly away their board for a Theseus just ends them in most cases, so it's probably worth having if you can get your hands on one of these. Then we've got some XZs that we can do. Tornado Dragon is incredible into back row decks specifically, which we can otherwise kind of struggle in because most of our disruption is based on monsters outside of Yaguramaru. But Tornado Dragon just lets you pop 2 cards per turn cycle. Exciton Knight almost never comes up because we can't really make it easily, and even if we do make it, we probably don't have follow-up otherwise. But sometimes you gotta Zeus a board. Blade Armor Ninja can let you detach to let one of your ninjas attack twice this turn. So if you go Mazen and you manage to make a Blade Armor Ninja, and those are the only 2 things on your board, you can make the Mazen attack twice. That's 7,700 or 7,200 damage, which might be lethal if they've paid a little bit of life or something. You know, maybe it comes up. Then we've got one Utopic Ray Lancer, who is a house of a card. He drops the opponent's monster's attack by 500, it can attack twice, and at the start of the battle phase, negate all the opponent's attack position monsters forever. So you can just make this off of one of your other spent XZs and just get a little bit more gas out of that. But again, we do not use these very frequently. Mostly you're just making Mazen and Yaguramaru. And so I would say let's go see some combos here, but this is not a 1-card combo deck. There aren't any, so let's go see some practice hands here. Alright, since the deck doesn't really do 1-card combos, I'm just going to play through like some partial games just to show you my thinking with a particular hand. And so with this hand, we're actually capable of getting to a turn 1 Mazen, which is normally what the goal is. But the opponent in draw phase is going to pitch a max C, so we don't really want to play into that. We'll give them the Upstart Goblin by pitching Tabari to summon out this Geo, but then we can normal summon the Mitsu, and what this does is we've got Mitsu's Negate online by flipping up the Joe, which will then book 2 other cards, and then we've got Karma Cannon and Moon available as extra disruption. So we've got a full board book, a single book, a double book, and a Negate, which is, what, like 6 disruptions off of giving the opponent 1 card into max C? Like, that's pretty good. The problem here is that if they clear any of our monsters, we don't really have follow-up because we need to make Mazen off of this to really do much of anything on our next turn. So here is where they are going to actually try and do something to us. One of the important things about ninjas to understand is this is a wholly reactionary deck. We aren't trying to proactively do anything because we don't have to keep the opponent's board clear to win. We are just reacting when they actually try to stop us. So here they go Bardiche to pop the Mitsu and then chain block it with Dingirsu's effect to attach a material from banishment. So this is where I rip the cord on Mitsu to negate. Unfortunately, they chain blocked, but so we're only going to negate the Dingirsu effect, and Mitsu will be popped. But this lets us flip the Joe. Then we can use Joe's effect to permanently book their Dingirsu. That's a resource they no longer have access to, and book our own Geo again so that on the next turn we can flip it face up and book more stuff. Apparently they had nothing else they can do past that point, so they just pass the turn, drop another max C, and we rip Tobari, which is a pretty good one because what we can do is we can flip up the Geo, use its effect to try and book the rest of the opponent's board. They go Fog Blade, which they happen to have one of, to try and negate the Geo, but this is targeted negation. So we can go Book of Moon on our own Geo to stop the negation, which means the book goes through. So now they have 3 monster zones they'll never be able to use again, in theory. We can normal summon the Tobarian. Because we can contact fuse with face down monsters, we can just make the Mazen, going for 25. We'll call this one here, but that's the general idea. We have booked a bunch of stuff, and we still have Karma Cannon if we need it. Hand number 2 is really, really good, honestly. We can normal summon the Hanzo and go get Ninjutsu Art Notebook, because we have this second Hanzo we don't really need in hand. So we can pitch that to turn it into a different Ninjutsu Art. This is one of them situations where I'm not sure the notebook was worth it, because we had to discard a card to get to the place that we were going to get to anyways. So now we're not going to have a discard for Super Poly, so we're just going to hold on to that. So maybe it was better to just not go through Notebook. I don't know. Man, Notebook is one of those weird cards that sometimes feels mandatory and sometimes feels bad. But we've got it online now, and that's okay. We still have a bunch of disruption. So I go with Karma Cannon when they summon out Nightmare Phoenix to prevent them from getting to full combo, hopefully, knowing that we've got multiple other disruptions available if they can extend past that. And they kind of can, but mostly they're just setting a bunch of stuff, which is great news for us because that allows us to reset this Hanzo so we can use him on our next turn. And we'll place Tenchi Kaimei because now that they're a back row deck, now that all of their disruptions are coming from the back row, Tenchi Kaimei can ruin their life. So we tribute off one of the Hanzos to go into Baku, who can add back the Ninjutsu Art Notebook of Mystery, so we are now officially grinding. We are going +1 every turn, basically. So we can go to main phase, activate the Tenchi Kaimei, then pitch the Baku that we draw for turn because we don't need it. Okay, so Notebook's not too bad. Sometimes it does its thing. To set the Ninjutsu Art Iron Digger. Then we can use that on their monster, pop their monster, trigger, summon out the Baku in defense position, just generate resources. We're just generating resources here. We make Mazen, don't even necessarily need to. We flip up the Hanzo and they try to negate the effect, which is when we use the Kagero, because again, that targets, so we can bounce the Hanzo to hand, summon the Kagero, and then we haven't even normaled this turn, so we can normal summon the Hanzo we just bounced, and because there's no once per turn, we can use its effect again, but they're going to go Fog Blade on it again. Unfortunately, this one's going to actually resolve, but that's okay. We can contact Fuse for another Mazen, get in for a bunch of damage, pop their back row, and because they pay life, they are dead this turn. So that's generally the thought. Accrue resources, slow down the game, stop the opponent as much as you can, and then win. Cool, cool. And I had some really good games this week because Ninjas always makes really good games. It feels like you're always on the razor's edge of losing or winning, and that's pretty cool. It makes it very cinematic. So we're just gonna do a bunch of single games just to give you kind of a mix. And first up, we've got Phantasm Spiral, which is a weird matchup because most of their stuff is built on destroying monsters and dealing with monsters, and most of our stuff is built on dealing with monsters. So we're kind of in this grindy control versus control situation where they open Time-Tearing Morganite, so they're drawing 2 cards every turn, but we open Ninjutsu Notebook of Mystery, so we are searching 2 cards every turn. So we're just like, is our resource game better than the opponent's? And the answer is going to end up being for sure. We are going to out-resource them like crazy, even with Pacifist on the field and even drawing 2 cards every turn. We use that Yaguramaru here because we need to get rid of Pacifist in order to actually win the game. This is one of those situations where it's a deck that has a card that is so important that if you can Yaguramaru it, then they probably lose on the spot, and they know that, so they try to negate him, but because it targets, we can use Kagero to bounce it to summon herself. So they pop the Yaguramaru to at least stop him from getting bounced, but we have 3 copies anyway, so it doesn't really matter, and the Kagero comes back either way because the bounce occurs at the end of the effect, not the start. So then we can make Mazen, they go to bounce Mazen, whatever, we summon Joe, we might as well use the Joe, make another Mazen, get rid of their vanilla, and now their field spell is banished. They're basically down 1,000,000 resources, and we've got plenty to work with. We set the dreaded Tenchi Kaime so that we can go to battle, pop their entire back row. We can banish their back row by flipping up the Agoromaru. And at this point, they have just been out-resourced. And because the entire back row is clear now, I can go Dancing Leaves, tribute a guy to summon Hanzo. I was greedy to activate his effect because it opened us up to Purge, but it doesn't really matter because we've had this Super Poly set, so we can just Super Poly away the Hanzo and get an attacker anyways. Swing for lethal. That's game 1. Game 2, we're going first into Doom Z. This is not a good build of Doom Z, I'm going to be honest. This is one of those weird hands where we don't open any monsters, but we can make it work because we have Notebook of Mystery, which can summon a monster, and then we can tribute it for Dancing Leaves to go from there. So we're actually completely fine not having a monster on board. But I want to talk more about how I'm not big on this build of Doom Z. I should probably do a video on Doom Z eventually. Maybe I'll do that next week. Because in Game 2, which you aren't going to see, I saw that they have this whole big, long, convoluted combo to search a bunch of bricks to set up extra negates and things to try and make like this unbreakable board. And what that does is it makes them lose automatically going second, like here, because they just draw a bunch of bad cards. They normaled Fualos. They didn't have anything to pop off Raiders because they have a bunch of weird bricks in their deck. And in exchange, they just automatically win going first. And while, for one, that's boring, and two, I just don't think it's correct because Doomsy is a good deck in and of itself, and I think its normal build is good enough. So, I don't know. Don't shove 7 extra one-of bricks in your deck to get a couple of extra negates, guys. It's not worth it. You brick, and then you die. The ninjas. Let's go to game 3. And then lastly, we are going first up against branded Springans, like the weird Springans hybrid thing that's not really a Springans deck, but you're using it to get access to branded. This is a really good hand for Notebook because we have the Baku that's not doing anything. So we set up a very, very scary board with Karma Cannon, Book of Moon, Dancing Leaves, and we can use Notebook of Mystery on the opponent's turn. We don't actually have space, and because we have so many disruptions, I go ahead and fire off Karma Cannon here before they get to Ecclesia of the Dark Dragon, even though they haven't used a normal summon, just because I figure we can Book of Moon the normal summon. Unfortunately, they go Cartesia as their normal summon, and that's pretty nasty, because that can allow them to use one of our their face-down materials to get out from the lock. But for some reason, they go to battle and try to swing over with the Cartesia, and Cartesia doesn't work in battle, so we can just book it with the Book of Moon, and now they're down their normal summon as well as the rest of their board. But they can search Springan's Kit. She summons out, she searches a card. They're not playing Branded Fusion because it costs way too many points, but they can go Branded in white. And while I'm not one to pat myself on the back, I think this was a pretty heads-up play where they go Branded in white to Fusion Summon, and I tribute their Fallen of the White Dragon after activation, which means they're going to have to banish the Fallen of the White Dragon, which they really don't want to do. They banish it, we summon out Geo. Joe goes to book himself because we can't book the Dragon that Devours. They add Ecclesia back on end phase, which is not a smart thing to do because now the protection of Dragon that Devours is gone. And we are officially in a grind game where we have a ton of resources. And so we are fitting to out-grind Branded all of a sudden, which is, it's a thing of note and a thing of beauty. And because we force them to banish their Albaz, they don't have anything to use with the Branded in red. And we just kind of take over the game at this point. We've got so many resources that even though we can't OTK the opponent because we don't put a whole ton of damage and a whole ton of bodies on board, we can just keep them under control. They go Ice Jade, oh no, we book the Ice or the Mirror Jade so it can't come back. They try to add back the Springan's Tally-Ho, so we detach the material from our Tornado Dragon to pop our own ninjutsu art notebook so they can't detach a material to add it back. And they're just kind of like out of stuff, and we've got, you know, everything in the world to work with. So that is it for games. Let's go do closing thoughts. And we're back with closing thoughts on Genesys Ninjas. This is going to have to be pretty quick because this is going to be a long video already. But this is a really fun deck that plays on a different axis from what most people are used to. So, like, it's just fun to pull out once in a while. That said, I could not play this every single week. I could not play this all the time. It takes too much brain power, too much focus, too much stress. I couldn't do it. And then I'm also not 100% sure on the build still. I kind of want to take out the notebook. I don't think its upsides are worth the downsides. Maybe we don't play Extrav just because we want access to multiple Mazens and multiple Yaguramarus, and this has a pretty solid chance of banishing at least like one of each of them. That's not great. I don't know what this slot should be because we do need card draw of some variety. So I don't know. The build, I maybe take out the Green Ninja as well. The build's not perfect, I don't think. I think there is definitely some iteration you could do, and that I might do the next time I pick up ninjas for a round. But even as is, it works quite well, and it's very fun, and it is pretty competitive. I mean, we beat Branded. That's one of the best decks in the format. It wasn't the best pilot, but like, we won that match. It just in its entirety, and it was all grindy, long games like that. So it performs. The deck performs largely on the back of having 100 points for non-engine and having a lot of good synergy with non-engine like Karma Cannon and Droplet. So, you know, this is a fun one. It's dirt cheap. Maybe pick it up and give it a spin. You might have a new favorite deck. But that will be it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.